Good evening, everybody. It is 5:30, so I'm going to start the meeting for since it is our first meeting of 2018, for the purpose of electing a chair. So I will now ask if there are any nominations for the position of chair. All right. Okay, so I will officially, Councillor Candon has turned it down, so I will now ask Councillor Holland, do you accept? And do we have a seconder? Councillor Osanek, any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the nominations and call a vote. So all in favor? Okay, none opposed. All right, and I will now then call the vote in 1 second for nominations for position of vice chair.
I nominate Councillor Vice Chair.
Councillor Candon, do you accept? Okay, Councillor Boehm will second. Any other nominations? Seeing none, I'll close the nominations. All in favor? And that carries. Excellent. I will now pass the chair over to our new chair, Councillor Holland.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here this evening. What do I do?
We'll call the regular meeting to order.
Okay, right. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have with us this evening on administrative policies, Councillor Osanek, Councillor Boehm, Councillor Schell is arriving, and Councillor Candon. And so first I need a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Boehm. Seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Schell. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you. Next, I would need a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting. Do I have a mover? Councillor Osanek?
There's actually no minutes with this one because it's a special meeting.
Oh, it's a special meeting. Sorry. Okay. So that's okay. And now we're going to move on to disclosure of potential pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Next on the agenda, we have one delegation. Stefano Hollins, who's Commissioner of Municipal Affairs, AMS, Queen's University, and he's here to present to the committee regarding the nuisance bylaw. And you'll have 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors, Ms. Chair. My name is Stefano Hollins, and I'm the Commissioner of Municipal Affairs at the Alma Mater Society of Queen's University. I'm here today to speak to the city about the City of Kingston's proposed nuisance party bylaw. In specific, I wish to discuss both the content of this bylaw in addition to the process that marked its conception. The city's proposed nuisance party bylaw includes a detailed, comprehensive procedure that provides a safeguard in ensuring that there will be only certain instances where someone could be eligible to receive a set fine of $500. First off, the AMS supports the decision to rest declaration powers in the hands of the Chief of Police or one of their designates. Although police are certainly awarded discretionary powers when deciding if a party constitutes the definition of a nuisance party, we understand that only the most qualified ranks of officers will be eligible to make that final decision. Secondly, we appreciate the city's willingness to incorporate the public's suggestion to tighten language about the compliance order. We believe that any partygoer or host should be given the opportunity to demonstrate to police that they are willing to comply and cooperate with an order to disperse before becoming eligible to receive a $500 fine. This safeguard is of fundamental importance to the AMS, as it ensures that the bylaw serves to weed out bad apples rather than placing financial burdens on unsuspected partygoers. We also support the minimum fine amount as it complies, like so many other aspects of this bylaw, with comparative best practices. Most other municipalities have a set fine of $250 to $750 for their nuisance bylaws. We believe that a $500 fine is a fair compromise to make in order to ensure that this bylaw fulfills its duty to act as a psychological deterrent. The AMS fully acknowledges that our student constituents may very well interact with this bylaw more than most other demographic groups. Although municipalities do reserve the right to create and pass location-specific legislation, the proposed nuisance bylaw has no language that directly targets any particular district or stakeholder group, such as Queen's University students. The city recognizes that not all Queen's students are responsible for all nuisance parties, which is why this bylaw intends to provide additional enforcement tools for police all across the city. However, this bylaw ultimately boils down to respect and community responsibility. The AMS and City of Kingston need to be united in sending a message to the community that everyone, including students, have no inherent right to disrupt public health and well-being by throwing large congregations that spill out to the public domain, impede the deliverance of emergency services, and risk the safety of all of those who may be implicated. As noted in the draft bylaw, city staff conducted a rigorous public consultation period. In addition to the information session and public feedback initiatives provided to the community, city staff did an incredible job consulting with student leaders on this particular issue. Through various written and in-person correspondences, the City of Kingston never faltered on its commitment to be transparent when appropriate with the AMS and, by extension, the entire undergraduate student body. We sincerely hope that the AMS and City of Kingston use this consultative process as a best practice in the development of any future legislation that may serve to affect students of Kingston's many post-secondary institutions. We firmly believe that the City of Kingston would not intentionally propose legislation that would seriously alienate students, which is why it is imperative that we build upon our strong cross-institutional dialogue in a way that leads to the creation of public policy that aims to be equally as acceptable to Kingston community members as it is for our student body. Ultimately, we feel that this bylaw will serve to help unify and not divide student and non-student community members. We are also pleased to see the city's commitment to an educational awareness campaign to complement the bylaw's implementation phase. We share a common commitment to ensuring that the bylaw is well communicated to the public. We want our students to avoid receiving a nuisance party fine, and equally as important, we need a strong communications campaign to ensure that this bylaw meets its objective of serving as a deterrence mechanism. In accomplishing both of these tasks, the ultimate result will be less acts of public disturbances under the context of a nuisance party. In closing, I believe that this bylaw is both sensical and necessary, as it provides an additional enforcement tool that bridges the gap between a low-level bylaw fine and a criminal charge. I thank you once again for listening to my address, and would again wish to take this opportunity to thank city staff for their partnership with all community stakeholders, including our student government. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, first, if there are any questions for the committee, Mr. Hollins, if you wouldn't mind, returning. We do have a question. Go ahead, Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering about how much do you think that the actual Queen student body understands or even knows that this is happening?
Yeah, so we've actually taken 2 steps to student body. So first was done through our representative democracy, which is our AMS assembly, which is our highest legislative body. I actually gave a 20-minute presentation to our AMS assembly, which was followed by a Q&A session. Our student leaders were very well receptive to the idea. They asked a lot of questions and offered their concerns that we relayed to city staff, which they addressed promptly. But I had certain student leaders ask publicly and on the record how rural municipalities could have such a bylaw in Kingston, while Kingston does not. Secondly, I also released an information sheet to our student body to inform them that they could get involved in the city's public consultation stage that ended in December. And from there, we also shared it on our AMS Facebook page, in addition to our newsletter that goes out to all 17,700 undergraduate students.
Thanks. Councillor Camden?
Thinking through, did I somewhere in there that you had an amendment that you would have made, like related to giving people warnings, or?
It was actually written in the draft bylaw that under the recommendations that the city took in from throughout the public consultation stage, we were just happy to see that that language was tightened around the dispersal order.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Seeing none, thank you again.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Just one total? One total. Okay. So next we'll move on to briefings, and we have one briefing this evening. We have Cheryl Hitchin, who is Social Policy and Strategic Community Development Manager, and will speak to us tonight regarding municipal discounts. Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you, and Madam Chair, just before Ms. Hitchin gets started with the presentation, I would just like to make a few comments. and give members of the committee some background in case you may not recall, but back in April, I believe, of last year, we had Mr. Harry Kitchen, who was here. He made a presentation in regards to the potential review of our discount programs. And from that meeting, council gave us a direction to go ahead and initiate some community engagement, which has been done, and I know that will be covered in the presentation in terms of the details and the number of focus groups, number of people that were involved in providing feedback and input. And I guess the message that I want to pass on to committee members is the intent here with changes in this program is really to look at the financial resources that we have and to redistribute that to people that need it the most, regardless of age. And that's what we're trying to stay away from, and really focus on people that are in financial need within our community. If we are successful to move from a LICO threshold, if you wish, to a LIM, which has a bit of a higher threshold in terms of income, it would allow an additional over 6,000 people in our community to have access to these discounts, which right now do not have access to. And those members in the community could be members of any age group. And again, the purpose here is to focus on the income. The other point that I would like to make is in regards to the funding that's being used. We do mention the reallocation of some funds to some of our social programs, and we would like to look at the implementation of some of the programs that could help to support some of our working low income in the areas of benefits related to dental, vision, and drugs, which the city currently doesn't have that, but we think it would be a great incentive to continue to support individuals in our community. And with that, I'll pass it along to Cheryl.
Thank you. I need my glasses now because I'm a boomer and I'm getting old. So I'm just going to give you some highlights from the report. You've actually received 2 reports, one last April and now this one, following our consultation process. So I'm just going to give you a few slides with some highlights to remind you of some of the things Ms. Hurdle just spoke to. So there's really 3 goals that we were trying to achieve. One is to increase access to discounts for those living in poverty. And as Ms. Hurdle mentioned, certainly right now our threshold is very low. And there's a lot of low-income people who can't access the income-based discounts, even though they are definitely by anyone's assessment living in poverty. The next is to focus the discounts on those in the greatest financial need. Right now, we have both age-based and income-based discounts. And lastly, and equally important, is to make the discounts more accessible. We've had concerns with the number of people who are accessing the discounts that could access them. So we're certainly trying to make improvements to the process. Just a quick reminder what our population looks like and how it's changed over time. The line in the chart is 2006, and you can see that we boomers are getting older. And the other thing that's not as easy to tell is the horizontal line is getting longer. Thankfully, people are living much longer, so that population grows both ways. So, as I said, the first goal is to increase access. And as Commissioner Hurdle mentioned, we're proposing to move from the LICO to the LIM. I've put on this slide the amounts for a single person, but both the LICO and the LIM are based on the number of people in the household. So there's a sliding scale. The numbers go up based on the number of people in your household. But just for comparative purposes, you can see the number of people in the different age cohorts in the orange that qualify as being poor based on the LICO, and then the change for the LIM. And notably, you can see for those 65 and over on a fixed government income, the province uses the LIM as kind of its calculating tool. So a significant number would now qualify, and we regularly turn people away who are, $1,000 over the LICO, but would definitely qualify under the LIM. So focusing the discounts and discontinuing offering discounts to young adults and seniors who have income above the limb after the limb after tax. You can see what the percentages work out to across. That's the green bars. And the red circles indicate those people who would no longer be receiving discounts because their income is higher than the limb threshold. So the next goal was making discounts easier to access. And certainly we're looking at a number of things. We're working on an online application process so people don't need to leave the warmth of their living room to apply and to receive approval. Doing the in-person applications at a number of other locations. Right now, you can only get access to the program at Housing and Social Services, and we know that's a barrier for people to physically get to 362 Montreal. So we'll be doing intake, for example, at the new Rideau Heights Community Centre. We've talked to the Senior Centre about doing intake in person there and really going to where people are so they don't need to make that extra trip. And lastly, right now, we do approvals for a 12-month period. We're looking at expanding that to a 24-month period because we know that people living in poverty don't tend to have huge income changes from year over year. So approving people for 2 years will cut down on the administrative volume coming through the door, but also make it easier for people. And here's a few of the key messages that Mr. Kitchen gave last spring. I apologize, I wasn't here for that meeting, but I understand he gave a very thoughtful presentation, and he's an economist, so I don't dare try and speak to his comments other than to point out that really his main message was that age-based discounts are inefficient and inequitable, and it's time to change them, especially when it comes to the older demographic, because the reasons those were given back in the 50s and 60s when that population was much poorer has changed over time. And then, as I mentioned, we went through a community engagement process this fall. The age-friendly Kingston Community Alliance was involved in the process from the beginning. In fact, they were involved last spring before we even started this process. And they have shown their support for the proposed changes. Public Health has submitted their comments and support, and tonight you've received a letter from the Community Health Center also stating support. As you probably heard, when our community engagement process started, we got a lot of media attention from across Canada. Did lots of phone interviews and radio interviews. We created through our new Get Involved Kingston site. We prepared a video. We did a frequently asked questions document to answer some of the questions we knew people would be asking without them asking them. And we conducted the survey, and the results you have in your package as an exhibit tonight. We conducted 8 focus groups with approximately 80 participants in various locations across the city. People signed up for those focus groups both through the online application and in person at our recreation facilities. And we received 279 responses to the survey. Some of those were on paper and then inputted, and the balance were done online. When we analyzed the surveys, certainly the demographics were representative of the population of the community in terms of age and locations. We actually mapped the responses based on their postal code to make sure that we had responses from across the community. The only group that was underrepresented in the survey responses were the 18 to 24-year-old category. So we did go through a process of weighting those responses to see if it made any difference in the results, and I can tell you that it was a 1% to 2% difference in any of the answers on the survey, so we gave you the raw data results instead of the weighted results because it didn't make a statistical difference. As indicated in the package, when we asked the questions about raising the income threshold, 76% were in support of going from the LICO to the LIM, and 60% of the respondents to the survey and the focus groups were in support of eliminating age-based discounts and moving to only income-based discounts. The words in the Wordle, I think that's what I call it, are really the responses we got from both the focus groups and the surveys. These were the most common words that were received that were not in support of the changes. And I won't read them all to you. The larger the word, the more often it was said. And then these are the words that were in support of the changes that we're proposing. And just to note that we didn't hear a lot of comments, negative comments around moving from LICO to LIM. These were really primarily around the elimination of the age-based discounts, and more specifically the age-based discounts for seniors. And as you can see, they were mostly around the fact that they felt they've earned the discounts and they've contributed to the community and therefore they deserve the discounts were really the main messages we heard, not in support, but certainly there was a strong number of people supporting the changes as being fairer, more equitable, giving better access to low-income people, and really doing the work that needs to be done. So that is it. I'm going to go sit down only because all of my notes are over there, and if you ask me a question I can't answer, I might have it in my notes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hitchens. So we will now go to questions from the committee. Any questions? Councillor Schell?
Thank you. I was just at a meeting before this, and a senior person there said, well, I'm not very keen on it because the low income is the old basis, she thought. So I explained, no, we're going to do it on a new basis, this Statistics Canada LIM Act. So a senior or anyone would bring their notice of assessment? Is that what they would need? And that shows the after-tax income? And so that $22,133 is the after-tax income that they would need. Is that correct?
Through you, yes. To answer your question, it is there after. It's actually line 236 on your notice of assessment that we use. It's the simplest process. Certainly out of all the programs that through Montreal, it's probably the easiest program to access. It takes about 5 minutes. And basically you're either below that threshold or above that threshold. And you're given a card that signifies that you're eligible for the program. And I should have said in my comments that we are still the only municipality I can find in Canada that has a one-window approach to accessing income-based discounts. Once you've got that card, you can use it to go to the Grand Theatre and get your discounted Grand Theatre tickets, you get your pet voucher, you can use it for recreation and for transit. So we've tried to make the process as fair and as simple as possible. Certainly some of the changes like doing it online and being able to scan your NOA and submit it that way if you want to do it will help with some of those issues. But yes, we certainly try and keep it as simple as possible. And I know there's a great fear I heard from some seniors about now needing to show verification of income, but having not gone through it, they don't understand what a simple process it actually is, and that we don't share that information. We've dealt with all those confidentiality issues in the 5 or 6 years we've been doing the program. So we keep it as simple as we can.
Actually, that's very helpful for me because, of course, I have had some comments. So somebody could make, say, $36,000 in income, but they're paying, say, child support. So their after-tax income comes in at, and these are divorced, someone who's divorced, so now classed as single. So they'd come in at $22,000, or their net income, assessed income is, say, $20,000. It's all you need is the notice of assessment, no matter what your income could be totally dividend income or something. But if it's after tax 20,000, you're eligible.
Yes, as I said in my comments, it's based on the household. So you, on your application, list all the members of your household. So we look at that line in terms of the comparator based on the number of people in your household. And the other piece I didn't mention was you have to bring in verification you live in the city of Kingston, because we have had some of our friends and neighbors try and access the program in South Frontenac and in Loyalist. So that's the other verification we ask for, is proof that you're a Kingston resident and proof of your income. But yes, it's all based on line 236. That's the magic line on your income tax.
That's only fair, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Okay. Okay, Councillor Hutchison, if you wouldn't mind going to a microphone, and we'll get to you. I have a question in the meantime. So a couple quick things. Maybe I just didn't see it, but in the report, what is the amount of the discount? Like, what are we looking at as far as what a discounted rate would be various services?
Are you speaking of the age-based discounts or the income-based discounts?
The proposed age counts, yeah.
So the proposed income...
That's right, proposed income-based, yes.
Thank you. For transit, currently, it's about 50% of it's based on 50% of the full adult fare. For recreation, it varies depending on what program and service you're accessing. You get an amount per year, and actually you can use that amount for whatever programs and services you want to. So it depends if you're buying a gym membership or signing your child up for swim classes or whatever you're using it for. That's the way the program currently operates. You get a set amount times the number of people in your family, and you can use it for whatever your family needs in terms of recreation. So, and then obviously the pet vouchers is a set amount. Grand Theatre, I can't off the top of my head remember what the percentage discount is, but it's a discount off the Grand Theatre present programs.
Great, thanks. And then one other quick one. The LIM, does it, so it's notice of assessment, so I take it doesn't factor in assets, like let's say if someone owns a home, for example, none of that, it gets looked at all.
The question, actually, when I was out doing my little road show during the consultations, I did get some questions around the needs assessment part of it, and that, everyone whose line 236 comes to a different amount may be in different situations. Some people may have more debt, some people may have a disability. How are you factoring in all of those things? And the simple answer is we don't factor in those things. We don't do a needs assessment. That is a more intrusive process. And basically most government programs are moving away. Certainly childcare is the most recent one to move away from that intensive needs-based and really just look at solely after-tax income. So whether you own a home, have 6 cars in your driveway, have $50,000 of student debt, or have a disability that's causing you a lot of extra expense, none of those things are factored in. And until we find a way of factoring those in without making the process either unfair or much more complicated, I think we'll stick with the way we're doing it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Councillor Hutt.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a few questions in order to clarify what's happening here. My first question has to do with the statement that seniors in Kingston are now the largest and wealthiest age cohort in the community. But it seems that your own information says otherwise. If at figure 2, where it states the median income in Kingston for 65 years and over, I presume that's who you're talking about, is $32,463. But the middle cohorts all have a higher median income. So I'm not sure how you arrive at that conclusion.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The other cohorts are smaller in terms of numbers, so it is the largest age cohort. So if that helps answer the question.
Well, they're not the wealthiest, though.
They're
the largest in number, but you're talking about income here. right?
Yes.
So they're not the wealthiest by median income.
Not when you compare median income. The range of incomes doesn't go as low for seniors as it does for any other age cohort because the province has a minimum amount, so that when you look at how many people are in each of the income deciles, there are not seniors in the bottom deciles because the province of Ontario makes sure that seniors don't fall into that depth of poverty. In fact, if you're on Social Ontario Works, your income doubles when you become 65. That's just the reality that we're facing. So it's a matter of the depth of poverty and looking at income across the deciles.
Okay, I see this in my own work, okay? People get CPP, OAS gains or whatever, their income actually goes up, even though they might have been employed before. But as a cohort, they're not the wealthiest. You can't make that argument and present your own documentation here.
Thank you. The only thing I would note is the age-based discounts do not apply to the other cohort that you're referring to, Councillor Hutchison. So we could have that debate, but at the end of the day, it would not be relevant in terms of the age-based discounts because the only cohort that actually receive the age-based discounts are the one that would capture the 15 to 24 and then the 65 and over. So if you look at those two cohorts by far, very far, the 65 and over is quite above. The other ones in the middle do not receive any age-based discounts.
And the first cohort, largely students, people living at home, students. So in Kingston, that would be definitely the case. So my other question is, I just want to make sure I understand this. In figure 6, it's a schematic indicating the amount that would be paid by the city if no changes were made, I presume, because that's a status quo, right? And it's compared to one where you implement the changes that you indicate. Okay, so the total amount is, the status quo is $645,714, and with the changes, $446,70, correct? All right, okay. So the difference is about $200,000. And so that's the increase we're talking about here. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I understood what was being said here. That's mainly why I'm here tonight, make sure.
Oh, Commissioner Hurdle?
Thank you. I just want a bit of clarification. So yes, there is a difference between the two that, so if we were to stay at basically with the same way we're doing discounts, so both based on income and also based on age, that's the total amount you're seeing there, 2026 at $645,000. If we're moving away from that and moving to an income base only and moving that threshold from the LICO to the LIM, which means an additional over 6,000 people of low-income individuals in our community now get access to this program, it reduces the overall cost to $446,000 by 2026. One thing that I want to point out, Councillor Hutchison, and unfortunately you arrived a little bit later, but I did indicate to the committee that one of our intent is to look at some of the potential savings that we could have there and reinvest that in poverty reduction program. And one of them that we're looking at is a program to provide benefits such as dental, vision, and drugs for working low-income, so primarily people that are working on minimum wage and do not have access to benefits. And often that can make the difference between a person being on Ontario Works, choosing to be on Ontario Works is at times because they have access to those benefits or returning to work. So really the intent here is about reinvesting the resources and the dollars into areas of most needs.
To that. And I will say that I applaud that going to the LIM is in the right direction. Question is, is enough of a direction covering enough people? That's the emails would say that I get, comments I get, okay? So enlarging the number of coverages of benefits would be useful too. I think if there's a problem with this, and I said this when we had this up for debate originally, and that is, what is going to be the cutoff? Well, the cutoff still leaves people in poverty and still leaves plenty of seniors in poverty. But more importantly, it seems to me that the issue is people that are above the cutoff and still will feel the loss of the benefit. So my question is this: how many people will lose the benefit? We know how many people will get the increase in using the limb, but how many people will actually lose the benefit?
Ms. Hitchin?
I don't have that number in front of me, but I can find it for you in terms of those red circles and how many people were actually accounted for in the red circles on my presentation. But we do know that switching from LICO to LIM, for example, for that over 65 population, increases the income-based benefit by about 1,000 people who fall in that gap between those two thresholds. You're absolutely correct. The limb is not the line at which you're suddenly out of poverty. No one would ever make that argument, I hope. And certainly we can make the line whatever council chooses to make the line. That one's the simplest because it's available across Canada and it's quite a common measure. If we created our own measure, we'd have to try and explain it, and thered be a cost attached to that. So I can find you the answer to your other question.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thank you. If I may, okay.
Yep.
I want to go back to figure 6. In reading it, perhaps I didn't read it carefully enough. When we talk about the project costs, are we including the foregone transit fares that people don't pay? Like this quite rightly talks about age-based discounts, the cost in terms of lost revenues. Are lost revenues in those numbers, or are they additional to those numbers?
Through you, Madam Chair, the age-based discounts numbers are actually the differential between the discounted rate and what the full fare would be, and that's actually what those numbers represent. It's put there as a cost, but it's really a lost revenue. And as the population ages and more people become eligible for it, that's why the number increases over time. And that's on the assumption that the same percentage of that population will be riding the bus over time. So there's a lot of assumptions in those numbers because my crystal ball isn't as clear as I'd like it to be. But
sure, I appreciate that. I just wonder that I understood that the lost revenues are part of those revenue numbers. And okay, so it makes my next statement kind of difficult because we're not actually taking that money in. We're not actually losing it. If a person's on the bus in the middle of the afternoon, the bus isn't full. We're not really losing anything. So if they were there at the rush hour, yes, maybe, okay? But it doesn't work otherwise. So if the difference is $200,000 and the average increase, like 1% tax increase, is, say, I think it's 2.2 million, something close to that. The loss of $200,000 or an increase in taxes in $200,000 would be less than 0.1% spread over 9 years. So why wouldn't we do both? Why wouldn't we allow the universal discount and bite the really rather small bullet, which is fund the limb?
Commissioner Hurdle?
Thank you, and council can, both council could choose to provide services for free overall as well. So those options are always there for council to implement. What we were trying to do here is not, I know the focus seems to be on the amount of money and how much we're trying to save to reinvest elsewhere, but I'm going to be quite honest that what we're trying to achieve here is an equitable system. At the end of the day, it's not about necessarily the amount of money in total. It's more about should people that are making $32,000 a year with a child, but they're only 40 years old, should they pay for the senior person that might be 67 and traveling to Florida during the summer? Should that person pay that mother with a child because she hasn't yet deserved it, she hasn't reached 65? Should she pay for the individual that gets to travel to Florida during the winter because that person happens to be over 65? And I think that's more the intent here, and to try to redirect the resources without going back to the tax base to get more money.
And that, okay? And I appreciate that. And we saw those numbers, I think, in the last report before this came forward, that some seniors are doing very well, thank you. They're doing better, much better than the median or even the average worker, okay? So that's if you have some sense of equity or equality, then you're going to find that argument attractive, right? I think the issue here, and it's not really examined here, but the real issue here is, and I want to make it clear, is the modestly income senior that is above the limb. If we get pushback on this, and I look to my fellow politicians here, that's where it's going to come from. And you've already got it. I've received it. I know others have received it, even though, because I hear them talking, right, in the hallways, right? So, and I'm not saying the person is making $66,000 a year on some pension and investments, and that is really up there my level of concern, and many of them aren't looking for a discount anyway.
Councillor Hutchison, we're going to just entertain questions at this point.
Yeah, well, I'm getting to the question. The question is, I think that do we not need to look at what happens to the modestly income person who's at 25,000 or even 30,000? Because the universal benefit covers them. And that's my concern. And I just wanted to come to this committee meeting and make it clear exactly what's the issue here.
Okay, Commissioner Hurdle.
Thank you. So, through you, Madam Chair, I think if we're going to look at seniors that might have more modest incomes, we need to look at all individuals that have more modest income. I do appreciate that seniors can be vocal, and I do appreciate that seniors tend to be quite active and involved in certain processes. I get that. But at the end of the day, from a staff perspective, we have maybe a little bit different role than councillors. I understand. What we would do, or what we would suggest if council is interested at looking at a different threshold, we would suggest that that threshold be applied to individuals of all ages. Regardless, it shouldn't be, from our perspective, it should not be about age, it should be about income. So if $25,000 is a threshold that council would like us to look at, we can run some numbers and see what that looks like. But what we're saying is we don't really understand why it would apply to 65 and up and not the youth, for example, which we already know in our community, the youth are quite low income. So I'm not sure. I know that youth don't necessarily get as engaged as seniors, that I do understand, but from our policy perspective, that's not something we would recommend. That's a political decision that would have to be made by council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stanek.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, comparator cities. So we saw that Toronto is thinking about maybe eliminating the transit discount to seniors, and that London already has as of January 1st, 2018. What about our comparators? Like, what discounts are they giving to seniors? I read an article that in Whitby, they were giving 25% discount on admission to the town's Aquafit programs. And so I just wonder, and that's in Whitby, which is, I know, one of our comparators. So what are our comparator cities doing?
Through you, Madam Chair, with respect to eliminating age-based discounts, there are many municipalities looking at it. There have been few that have actually actioned it to date. Obviously, the City of London is one that has recently made that change with respect to transit. BC Ferry Service has now started charging seniors for ferry rides. For a long time, the ferry was free to seniors. So, you know, I can name some communities that are looking at it, but in terms of actually changing policy, we're at the front end of that discussion. But based on the media attention that we got nationally when this first started in terms of our engagement, there's certainly a lot of interest in it. And I did actually get responses to the survey from across Canada. We didn't factor those into our results for obvious reasons, but many people from across Canada saw the value in making the change, and I heard comments like the time has come for this. You know, City of Ottawa, for example, is considering it, but they haven't actually actioned it yet.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions in the briefing? All right, seeing none, thank you again, Ms. Hitchin. And we are moving on now to to our business items. So the first item of business, municipal discounts. So we have a recommendation. Okay, right. So any further questions from the committee before we put the motion on the floor? Okay. And any members of the public wish to speak? Okay. Seeing none. Read it. Okay. So we have a recommendation. I will read it, that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend that Council approve the elimination of municipal age-based discounts effective January 1st, 2019 for all city programs except transit, which will come into effect January 1st, 2020. That the income limit for the My Kingston Municipal Fee Assistance Program be increased to the Statistics Canada Low Income Measure after tax, effective January 1st, 2019. And that all remaining funds utilized to support the age-based discounts be redirected to support poverty initiatives in the community. And that staff continue to make operational improvements to the My Kingston program, including the creation of an online application portal and moving to a 2-year eligibility approval to make it more accessible to all low-income residents in the community. I have a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Councillor Candon. Any further discussion? Councillor Schell?
Thank you, Chair. I'm probably the person on this committee that would be eligible for seniors discounts. And I think this is a very important move for the City of Kingston. I am of that cohort where back in the day you could get a job really easily, and they were defined pension plan jobs. And there's a huge whack. I'm not one of them, but there's a huge whack of us that have very good pensions and who have already retired with very good pensions. And the reason that it would be going up to 600,000 is, as more and more people age, which we are, they would become eligible for these discounts automatically, seniors. And we know that statistically, young people are the ones that are struggling. And even though the income looks great for the ages sort of from 30 to 65, that's when you have children and you're trying to buy a house or trying to pay rent, sending kids to university. So yes, they tend to have a higher income because they're working very, very hard to support all this. So to create a system where it's based on the notice of assessment and your net income, I think, is so fair, because the 22,133 is not your gross, it's your net income for tax purposes. So this just makes total sense to me as we accept the fact that seniors have changed. That whole idea that if you're on Ontario Works and then you become 65, you're suddenly rich compared to what you've been for years. We've been good to seniors in this country, and I'm one, so I certainly agree with that. But this is an excellent idea, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Sam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Hutchinson raised that good, how many people would lose the benefit. And so a question to our clerk, this is a special meeting. Until we get the answer, would we be allowed to defer it? Like, we know that we're meeting again in March. It's like a regular meeting. So are we allowed to defer a special meeting?
Certainly, it follows all the regular rules of procedure, so it is available to the committee to defer the motion if they wish. Oh, there's a comment from staff, though.
Ms. Hitchin?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to answer the question. And I'd like to confirm this with less than my calculator on my phone. It's about 30,000 people when you add the people who will no longer get an age-based discount between 18 and 24 and the population over 65. It's about 30,000, but I'll give you a more concrete tomorrow when I can confirm it.
Okay.
I just wanted to that number to give the impression that we're talking about 30,000 people that are low income. That 30,000 would be people that are above the limb.
So, and also just to clarify then, the 30,000, you're talking about eligibility, not current users of the program as well, right?
Absolutely. That's based on if every single citizen in those age groups was accessing the discounts, and we know for a fact that isn't close to being true for either of those cohorts.
Okay. All right, Danik?
Well, I would still want to know before I vote, so I'll just move a deferral. But if it passes, is it possible we could get the answer well before the March meeting so we can still think about it and assess it instead of the night of? Okay, so I will move deferral till the March meeting. I can't remember what night that is. March 8th, maybe? Thank you.
Okay, I have a second. First of all, Councillor Bohm, so the motion is to defer this item to the next meeting, March 8th. Anything to time or place? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Fails.
Do I still have the floor?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I've supported low, like anything to help the low income since 2006. I know that for Councillor Hutchison, every time, at least twice, when he raised it at council to even try to increase the minimum number of years that a landlord has to keep a unit affordable, we tried to increase that from 15 years to 20 years, twice. And even though it lost, I supported it. I was one of the votes for it. But for this, I cannot support it, even though I know it will help low-income people. It's because it directly targets the middle class and lower middle class, and that represents, a good portion of my district. For CKWS, they did a special 2 weeks ago interviewing the Kingston Seniors Association, which were not one of the, associations, affiliations mentioned in the report. They said that we've encouraged anyone who has called our association to contact their city councillor, because this is really a political issue, right? It's a municipal issue, and the association isn't taking a stance on this because it's a municipal funded program that has no connection with our association. So the people in my district, they have definitely contacted me. I've heard them through emails, through phone calls, and it hasn't been nice. It's been awful listening to them, and I sent the report to the ones that emailed me. I sent the report out when it became available on the weekend, and, their comments are still, they're against it. And there's just so many reasons why I do think, like Councillor Hutchinson kind of mentioned it, for the high-income people that are seniors in in Kingston, I think a lot of them don't use the subsidy anyway, right? In the wintertime, a lot of them are in Florida. In the summertime, they're not, they got their private club memberships, or like they're driving down to downtown Kingston. They're not even taking the bus. I definitely do appreciate that in this report, we're keeping the transit discount for seniors still, with all the other changes. So that's definitely appreciated. We're not giving up the transit discount, but it just hits the middle class. I had some people say to me that they're using the Invista Center Fitness Club during the day, and that there's a lot of seniors, like during the day, the rest of us are working, a lot of the seniors are using the Invista Fitness Club during the day, and they said that if we lose our discount, it's already higher than a lot of private clubs, so if they lose the discount, then they're just gonna go to Planet Fitness, which right now is having that special $5 down, $10 per month. A lot of my friends go to Planet Fitness. And so now what could happen is we could lose some of our, revenues at our fitness centers and have to now increase the tax subsidy to our fitness centers because more people are going to private places because they're losing the little benefit of the seniors discount to the fitness centers. So I just cannot support it. About the online survey, I know it says that 95% of all Canadians have the internet. My mom and dad, they live in Brampton, so it's not biased here in Kingston, but they're 80, and they do have high-speed internet, but my mom only knows how to email, and my dad only knows how to Google castles in Europe. So they would never be able to figure out how to do an online survey, but they are one of those 95% of Canadians that have internet service. And so, I do like how you say in the report, we'll try to expand the intake process, do more outreach, have applications for these discount programs available at more places. I think that's great, but I just don't know how many seniors really knew about the survey and giving their mind, but definitely they listened at the Seniors Association, and they contacted me through emails and through voicemail messages. So I cannot support this.
Thanks. Any other comment?
Thank you, and through you. I'm torn on this one. Like Councillor Osanik, I heard from so many people on it, and to me, I definitely understand what the intent is, and I support the intent. I think the torn is that how this is being perceived in the public is we're taking something away. We're not necessarily giving it to the people that need it most. And so I think part of my conflict here is that we seem to have lost the conversation right from the get-go because we started with words like eliminating instead of modernizing or adapting or shifting. And that's where a lot of the seniors picked it up, that I'm losing something. And we still further lost the conversation because when people contact me about it, I'm spending 20 minutes to 30 minutes on the phone or via email trying to explain the program. And even after, there's still questions that even I can't answer. And it's like, you're almost trying to convince them, which I feel like if I'm at that point, then we've kind of dropped the ball on trying to actually get this out to the public and have people understand it. So that's why I believe a lot of the seniors are frustrated, and all they see this is something being taken away from them. And there's a good chunk of them that'll still be eligible for it and may actually have an increase in funding. The other thing is, I really do like what Councillor Hutchison said, which is, why can't we do both? And I think that's something that I could support if we sort of phased out the age-based discount while bringing in this sort of new, I guess, modern discount. Then essentially you're kind of like, I guess, lessening the blow in a sense, and you're giving people time to adapt and understand the changes, as opposed to just seeing it right now where you have a whole group of people who feel like they're losing something and don't really understand it. And I mean, based on some of the questions around here and some of the questions that Councillor Hutchison asked around the money and everything, we still don't seem, and Councillor Osanik also mentioned, are we robbing Peter to pay Paul? Because these people that access the fitness centers and a lot of our other things, which comes as revenue, is some of them will no longer go because they're $1,000 above the income threshold. And it kind of sounds like we're not 100% sure. Is it 25,000? Is it 30? Is it 35,000? So for me, it just seems like we're still missing some information, and it seems frustrating simply by the fact that the vast majority of people in the public that this affect still don't understand what the intent of it is. So I think with our new public engagement framework and sort of how that was supposed to go, I guess it's a little bit frustrating that I'm still having those conversations and getting all those emails, and I've heard from a ton of people. And it doesn't matter how much I try to explain what we're trying to do and why it's beneficial. And I do truly believe that the intent of this is to benefit a whole different group and not any age-based group. But the biggest frustration is it's just not being properly understood out there. So I'm open to ideas, but as it stands right now, it's like I'm torn. I don't think I can support this at this point because the vast majority of people don't understand it. And I feel like if we just go ahead with this without people understanding it, it's just not a positive thing, especially when we've just come out with this brand new public engagement framework. And you're going to have, once this happens tonight, and then it goes to council, then you're going to see basically everybody's phone light up and it'll hit the news and it'll hit prime time. And then all the people who don't understand it are going to really all of a sudden come to the forefront. So I think with that, we've had a little bit of a miss as to how this has been interpreted by the public. And I don't know if there's a way to go back and do that again. But other than that, it really basically makes me torn on it because I agree with the initiative. I just don't know if we got there the right way.
Thank you. Councillor Candon?
Thank you, and through you. I'm going to support this. One of the reasons I think is because I'm not running for council again. And I think that this reminds me a bit of the way we looked when we first came into council. We were looking at how we treated housing, how we looked at housing and homelessness, and we were going from a concept where we had shelters, and then we went more towards like a long-term stay. So we were doing things for the community, but we came up with ideas and ways in which we could serve people better in our attempts to help people. I think that this is a more fair and equitable way to help more people. I do feel that if somebody says, well, hey, I lost a benefit here, I don't feel that bad saying it's because your income's high. It's kind of a nice thing to have. That's a pretty nice way to shoot somebody down because they have a high income. That's kind of a nice thing, I think, compared to people who may need that more. So I think that in the short term, if you look at the way we're looking at housing and homelessness, and I think if you look at the way we're giving benefits to people and the criteria that they have to meet in order to get those benefits, or discounts, I should say, in the short term, people might get upset with us, but I think in the long term, it's a better approach to take. And it's a better form of best practices in the way the city does business. But again, in the short term, it might not be popular. I think that our media certainly doesn't do us any favors. Maybe sometimes they like to create controversy because they try to sell newspapers. I have no idea, but I think this might be one of those ones. But and it might not be good for a few weeks, but long term, I think supporting a motion like this is actually better for helping the people who actually need it, and that's what it's all about. So I'm going to support the motion, and I think that logic is on my side.
Thank you, Councillor Candon. So just a couple comments. I'll be. Deputy Chair, Vice Chair Candon, can you take the chair?
I will, and I recognize.
Thank you. This is my first municipal chairing the committee, so I'll get there, I hope. So yes, I'm happily supporting this recommendation. I know that many members of the public have been upset by this in some way or another, and I'm sorry about that. I'm sad that that is the case. I wouldn't want the feelings expressed at some of the consultations. I do think we have to validate how they're feeling, and if they feel that they have paid tax and that they had certain expectations over their lifetime with what their tax dollars would do for them at a certain point in their life, I think we have to acknowledge that feeling that they have. I don't, however, see that as enough of a reason to reject what is really, really good policy here. And there are other arguments, I guess, to address at this point, which have to do with some people have felt that the seniors discounts in particular were, and for youth as well, age-based discounts in general, were ways to encourage members of a certain demographic to be more active or to introduce them to transit, for example, if they'd never taken transit before, or to introduce them to exercise for their benefit and for the benefit of all of us, essentially, if everyone is healthier. So I think those incentives are good, and I'm glad that the programs have had that as a cause along the way. But and I would, of course, like to see more. I would love to see, for example, free transit. I agree with Councillor Hutchison. It would be wonderful to be able to bump that threshold up even more, to get to an income base where we're not really just looking at low income, but we're looking at those who are in that range where they're struggling with the demands of work and family, and one bill can sort of put them over the edge. And since there's no needs assessment involved in this, I think a higher threshold would be good. But we're not having that discussion yet. So in general, I'm proud and pleased about all the work that went into this. Of course, we will hear from angry residents. I know that no matter what, I will be holding my head high and trying, as I say, the very best to explain, to be understanding about their concerns and their feelings about this issue. But I feel that it's a wonderful policy initiative, and thanks to staff.
I return the chair.
Thank you. So we'll call the question on the resolution. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. So the next item of business is the nuisance party bylaw. Okay, so first we're going to hear from Commissioner Hurdle.
Sorry, Madam Chair. The next report on the agenda is in regards to the nuisance party bylaw. And basically, I just want to make a few opening comments, and then we'll let Mr. Cusson actually go through a bit of a briefing on the report. And I think Mr. Holland commented earlier in regards to the extensive outreach that's been done, not only with the Student Association, but there's been, I wanted to reassure members of the committee that there's been work done as well with the Landlord Association, because they did come forward and express some concerns initially, as the particular bylaw does provide for the ability at some point in the process to actually put a fine to a landlord as well. So there's been quite a lot of outreach done through this process and research as well. And with that, I'll pass it on to Mr. Cusson to walk through the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hurdle. So in developing this draft bylaw, we really focused on the cities of Guelph and London, looking to them to serve as a framework for our bylaw. We've provided some changes in regards to providing greater clarity, enforceability. We've also taken into consideration a number of the suggestions that we've received in our public consultation process and in our stakeholder meetings. So authority is given to the chief of police or their designate to declare a large social gathering or a party to be a nuisance party. So this is characterized by one or more of a list of criteria that you would expect to see at a large social gathering. It's included in the report. Just to highlight a couple of them, so public intoxication, the obstruction of vehicular or pedestrian traffic, or use of or entry upon a roof not intended for such occupancy. So while a single criterion from this list is required to be present, or only one is required to be present, we would expect that more than one element would be present in most cases when dealing with this bylaw. So in terms of how this would work in practice, police would arrive on scene. They would document and communicate the information that they see at the scene to a police supervisor. This police supervisor would be a rank of sergeant or higher, and would serve as the designate of the chief of police. So they're the ones who are responsible for the decision as to whether or not a social gathering or a large social gathering meets the criteria of a nuisance party. And would declare it as such. So subject to that declaration, they would issue an order. So the order would state that the nuisance party cease and that all attendees at that nuisance party who don't reside at that premises leave. So a host or an attendee who doesn't comply with that order is at risk of being fined under this bylaw. So there's some additional provisions when we compare it to the City of London and the City of Guelph that we've included, and just a couple to highlight. So the draft bylaw contains a provision that requires landlords to be notified of an initial nuisance party occurrence at their property by way of a warning notice. So this is intended to provide landlords with an opportunity to take steps and demonstrate that they've taken steps to mitigate future nuisance party occurrences at their property. There's also an opportunity for attendees to comply with an order. So there isn't any situation where an attendee of a declared nuisance party could just be given a ticket. They need to not have complied with the order to leave that nuisance party. So subject to approval by the Ministry of the Attorney General, staff are recommending a set fine of $500 for those who are found in violation of the nuisance party. And a point of clarification as seen in the supplemental report, a set fine of $500 would carry a provincially mandated victim fine surcharge of $110 rather than the $125 that was included in the original report. So with an additional mandated court fee of $5, the total payable fee would be $615 if found in violation of this bylaw. So what we're seeing in terms of other municipalities and their set fines, so they range from $250 to $750, and the total payable fines range from $305 to $880 with those additional mandated fees included. And lastly, I'll just say that we recognize that public education is a really important piece of this new set of provisions. So staff are looking to work with neighborhood associations, landlord and tenant groups to develop communications that are specific to each group and helping them to make sure that they can take steps to prevent nuisance party occurrences or prevent them from falling under in violation of this bylaw in the future.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councillor Shaw?
We're happy to see this. Thank you. So just to be clear, if the police attended a party and there's outdoor drinking, which is against the law, they can right now, before it's declared a nuisance party, fine someone, give someone a ticket for public drinking. So things like that don't change. But I know that, well, from what I've seen, police aren't really happy to do that kind of thing. Or okay, why don't I just wait for that?
Okay. Do you have a response? I'm sorry, I don't know your name. What's your name?
It's basically, as things stand right now, what the police do at sort of house parties is you can ticket someone for drinking in public. That stays the same.
Depending on the location of the offense. So if it's on private
Oh,
property.
sorry. If you could just hit the button on your mic, thanks.
I'm new at this too.
Yeah.
So if they're standing outside on their front yard, not a ticket.
Not a ticket.
But if they're on the sidewalk,
That's correct.
a ticket. But the nuisance party changes police powers. I mean, I'm going to try and explain this to some of the people that, are upset about things. So it changes the power that if the superintendent, the sergeant agrees this is a nuisance party, how does that change the power that you have to deal with a big house party that's spilled onto the street?
It would offer us another tool in order to, I guess, resolve the situation that we've been called to. Certainly it gives us another fine that we can issue, and it gives us a little more flexibility to deal with the issue at hand. But those will be circumstances where it's beyond the normal call for service that we get for a noisy party. It will be business as usual. We have circumstances where it goes beyond that by virtue of the size or the, I guess, the feeling of the party as you kind of get to that residence or that place. So those are the tools that we don't have right now that would kind of certainly assist us, and I'm sure will assist our bylaw friends too, to kind of stop before something happens or endangers someone's life. So that's how I see it, having a more of a flexible ability to resolve the issue and give that order to cease and desist and basically resolve the issue. Right now, we don't have that. Shy of going on the criminal end of things, this kind of gives us a bridge to that before we get to that point.
And a big one for me that it sounds like is there are times when there's a party, you get called, you come, everybody sort of disperses, and then a half hour later, they're all back. So I can imagine if you've arrived and given them a warning, you've got permission to say this is a nuisance party, disperse. If you get a call an hour later that they're all back and it's just as bad, that's when you can apply a fine. You've
It could be
given a
one way
warning,
we can apply this bylaw.
and
yes.
it could be more than one person.
It could be more than one person.
Okay. I mean, I hate to say this, I'm looking forward to this being enacted because I think it will go a long way to helping with some of the things that are going on. Thanks for your answers.
Great. Councillor?
For you, my question is kind of similar, like as it relates to the practicality of applying it. So I think that if you look at sometimes, say for example in homecoming or something like that, there's no way the police could ever issue everyone a ticket who deserves one. So there may be people who are like drinking on the street or something like that, but if you stopped every single person, you would probably, there's other situations where there's more serious things happening that you allocate your time to. So I guess my concern is like, how would you, in a situation like say homecoming, would you just go down the street issuing tickets if every single house on the street had it? Or
Well,
I'm just thinking from a practical perspective, because there's probably times in a day when a police officer says, the book tells me to do this, but the real situation, I should do this in order for me to fulfill my function.
That applies to everything that we do, right? There's only so many of us, and how we handle those situations is basically how the best we can. In this part, the beauty of this bylaw is that it gives you that order, and then we in fact have the authority to kind of cordon off the area and prevent further people from gathering and stopping them from coming in. And then once the order is given, if they do decide to breach that or not listen to our authority, basically they can be ticketed as those occasions arise or the people try to kind of go through. Certainly, for the most part, and we've had these conversations at the public consultation, is most of the people actually comply to our direction. And like I said, business will be the same as what we've been doing up until the point it becomes problematic. And this is just that, like I said, that tool that will give us the order to kind of put the order in place and say, this is enough. And then hold the people that are there accountable for the action or the infraction that is caused by the public nuisance.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Okay. Anyone from the public? Any questions? Okay. So seeing none, we will move on to the recommendation. We have a recommendation that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend to Council that the draft bylaw attached as Exhibit A, the draft nuisance party bylaw, be approved, and that pending approval of the proposed bylaw attached as Exhibit A, the nuisance party bylaw, staff be directed to submit the required set fine schedule to the Ministry of the Attorney General for approval. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Schell excitedly, seconded by Councillor Bohm. Any discussion or comments? Councillor Schell?
Yeah, interestingly, it just occurred to me that we had a young person on our street who had a big party. And I just realized if one of the neighbors had phoned on him, who was 17 or something, could have been awful under the nuisance bylaw, but none of us did anyway, so it's okay. But it's the big ones that have been going on this fall particularly. It was a wonderful fall. And there were some house parties in a particular cul-de-sac that just kept going on, and the neighbors were going crazy. So I'm really pleased that there's this tool, because a 600, even though one of the neighbors has said to me that's not nearly enough money, I think it's pretty significant. It gives the police a tool, especially this warning, because up until now, from the years I've been a counselor, a warning seems to be, oh yeah, let's all disperse, and then they come back. So I'm really pleased, and I think there's going to be a few shocked people. But on the other hand, there could be a lot of people that go, once they understand, I'm sure the policeman is going to say, if you don't disperse and stay dispersed, this can be declared a nuisance party, and you will get a very large fine that is a provincial fine, and it'll be on your record. So I'm really pleased that this is happening. I'm pleased the police are happy about it too, actually, that they're happy to have another tool. Because yes, St. Patrick's Day is coming. Hence, if the weather's good, St. Lawrence is kind of crazy too, as well as Queens. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks a lot.
Councillor Sanik? No? Okay. Councillor Bowman? Oh, you were voting earlier. Sorry, I saw your hands go up. Okay, so any further comments or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thanks very much. So we have no motions. We have no notices of motions. Other business? Any other business? No? Okay. So no correspondence. The correspondence is on the addendum. The date and time of the next meeting is Thursday, March 8th. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Motion to adjourn? Thank you, Councillor Schell. A seconder, Councillor Kinnan. Excellent. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries.